Hello everyone, welcome back to Terry and Olly Talk Teaching. This is Olly in Japan and Terry in London. How are you doing, Terry?
Very good, thanks. Very good indeed.
Good, good. As you know, hopefully everyone who's been watching in the past, we've had a chat about what makes a good teacher. I mean, I'm going to broaden it out today and looking at some ideas around what makes a good school.
Yeah.
Terry's going to start off in a minute. He's going to say, Terry, please say your ideas, and then I'll maybe respond, give some of mine, and yeah, we'll just go through, maybe looking at the ones that stand out as the most important first, and then move on from there. So yeah,
Yeah,
looking
yeah. I think
forward to it.
we're gonna kind of got to go for a kind of top 10, aren't we? See how
Yep.
it works out. We'll
Yeah, it
kind of go
works out.
top
We've
10.
both
We're
got our
probably
own
gonna have
ideas. We haven't.
some agreement and some things that neither of us have thought about because we haven't got our heads together before this, so that should make it quite interesting.
Yeah, we've
So,
purposely not. We've not compared notes yet. So yeah, we're
yeah,
going to see how much we agree and differ. And yeah, okay. So over to you, Terry. Start us off from some of your
okay,
top ideas on what makes a good school.
great stuff. Well, the first thing I'm going to say, I think we probably both agree with this that whatever we decide makes a good school, all good schools are different. So because you've got a range from, nursery, preschool, through primary, special, secondary, pupil referral units, and alternative provision, they've all got things in common that make them good, but they're all going to be very, very different. And
Yeah,
we may reference that as we go along. I'm going to combine three so we can get to the 10 rather than the 12 I had initially, because I think these three are like I would call them the three-legged stool of what makes a good school. And if you don't have these three in balance, for me, it just doesn't work. And I've got an anecdote which I think proves that. And that is together, good discipline. The kids need to be in there by and large, as much as is humanly possible, behaving themselves so everybody can learn.
sure.
High academic expectation, yeah, high academic standards and expectation, whatever the ability range of the kids. So not dumbing down and not low expectations. That's a killer. But also caring, compassionate, and taking consideration for the well-being of the children, their families, their parents. If you get those three together in the right proportions and they all work together, I don't care what sort of school it is, it will be a good school by and large. We should be a good school. This first came home to me when I was doing my PGCE in the dark ages in the late 80s. And the first experience of going into the secondary school, which of course we specialised in, was we were sent every Monday from our college in Liverpool to an inner city comprehensive in the kind of Everton area of Liverpool, Everton Brow, called Breckfield Comprehensive. It's now gone, so I can talk about it. It's
Sure.
part of a big merger chain. Now, it was my first experience, apart from my own school, of going into a secondary school as a trainee teacher. And the third one of those, caring, looking after the well-being of kids, understanding the very difficult lives that a lot of them had in a very tough part of Liverpool, they were great at that. No doubt, caring people. Academically, the expectations were rock bottom. Nothing was expected of these kids. It really
Yeah.
wasn't. And discipline, you either had you had rooms where you had strong characters where there was very good discipline, and you had rooms next door where it was bedlam because there was no systems, no agreed way of working. And you and I have worked in a school that's not dissimilar to that, I would argue, in a different part of the world. So when I had sorry for the long preamble, but when I went back to college to talk to the tutor, and there was a little group of us in the tutorial, PGC, the guy in charge said, "What did you think? What do you think of Breckfield?" And this young uh, fellow student said, "I think it's a lovely school. It's a great school." And I said, "I can't agree because it gets certain things really right and other things like drastically wrong." And I quoted, whilst we're there, that the attendance is about 75% on a good day. So what makes it a good school? So that was when I first started thinking about that three-legged stool, and
Sure.
you can boost one, but if the others aren't, it'll fall over. It's not stable. So those three together, I'm going to say as one as a package. That's my first. Over to you.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I like the idea of the needing the three. And I think as you were talking, I can see how they all interact because if the more caring you are, I think will lead on to better better behavior from students, because of course we've discussed a lot of different reasons for poor behavior, but we can certainly get rid of some through showing that we care, and we can be caring and strict, which I've seen a lot of good examples of in schools, the school we've worked at, um, in the same at the same time. And I think certainly, obviously, discipline with academic expectations as well. Those students who want to push themselves. Has always annoyed me, the ones who want to push themselves being held back by poor
Yeah,
discipline. More annoyed if the teacher's not dealing with it than the students who only,
yeah,
but by and large, in what with secondary education children. So I think, yeah, they certainly do all three link together, and I think one follows the other. I think just to pick up on one thing, it's got to be consistent, hasn't it? It's got to be if you haven't got all staff singing from the same hymn sheet on any of those, you're going to have problems. It's not going to be a good school, if you like. Certainly, discipline stands out the most there. I think in the schools I've worked at, you can see, and recently I dealt with a teacher, worked with a teacher who's having problems, and they knew their policy, but they weren't following it. They wanted to keep on giving chances, and I said, look, you've got to go there. You've got to go there, and you've got to face it head on, because otherwise, those students are stopping the academic expectations. Now, that teacher is a caring teacher, but that teacher's got to show in a different way. So, yeah, I think
yeah.
very important. What I would start with is community.
Hmm.
The school's really got to be part of its wider community. We were talking earlier, I'm at a school now that's 96 years old, and we had our sports day yesterday, and it's been going on for 96 years, and all different types of people from the community were invited to show what we do and to look at how we can build community relations, which sounds strange at a sports day, and it might well be in different contexts, but at the sports day, we had our academic affairs team doing community outreach sessions on the same day. It was nice how they merged all that together. But I think, a school's got to be the heartbeat of a community. I know the school we've worked at in the past, I think that's one of the best things it was. When things
Yeah,
went wrong, people came back to school. I
yeah,
know when things nothing to do with the school happened, the school was the centre where people could go to for help. So I think the school's got to build partnerships with the community, parents, local agencies, networking. When I was at the school in England, we did a lot with the local police who could come in and talk, local emergency services, local feeder schools, invite them in for events, assemblies. The school I work at the moment is an IB school, and we have to do service. And one of the best things I like it is when our students go out into the community. So one example is our students go off to local kindergartens and they go and do lessons, language lessons with them, or they go and make things with them, all linked to the International Baccalaureate. But it's all about the community, and that those students there and the parents there can see the school as a welcoming place. So for number one, I'd put, community. Obviously, citizenship's my specialism
yeah.
in teaching, so it's all linked to citizenship as well. Having a community school that's open to everyone in the community, and also is a place where students know their place within the local town where they are.
Yeah, yeah, great. I mean, strangely, it cuts across some of the things I'll talk about later. One, I've got extracurricular, but not just for the kids,
Sure.
involving the community, people coming in and using the school facilities,
Yeah.
it being alive in the evening and often first
Yeah.
thing in the morning, rather than dead before the kids get in and the staff, and as soon as the kids have gone home in the afternoon. Being, as you say, being the centre of the community, whether primary or secondary. Parental
I
involvement,
think
I'll
I
come.
think I don't know what you think. Sorry to interrupt, but I
No,
think
go on.
not all schools make the most of that in the evenings.
No, they
School
don't.
I worked at, we had an MP Hustings. We
Yeah,
obviously where we worked together, we had the local council gym. But yeah, I think schools should do more evening classes. I think ex-pupils going back. I think
yeah,
schools could do more in the evenings and weekends. The schools in Japan where I am at the moment, that's very much part of who they are. My school, I laugh.
yeah,
It's like the New York. It's a school that never sleeps. Just things going on all the time, from
yeah,
hosting tea ceremonies there to sports events. So I think, yeah, I think maybe schools in England, the ones
yeah.
I've
We're
worked at
behind.
anyway, I mean,
We're
the
we're not
students
as
should
we're
do a
not
bit
as good
more.
at that. We're definitely not.
No,
Some are very good. In general, nowhere near as good, I would suggest.
sure.
So, and yeah, and funny enough, I'm going to talk about past pupils, former pupils coming back and what they can
Yes.
contribute. So, yeah, I agree with all those. My second one is the school mission or motto,
Right.
which people can buy into, parents, kids, staff, teachers. Keep it simple. We've been at school. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will be at schools with overly complex and not easily understood school mission statements or mottos. Achievement for all through the pursuit of excellence. I remember in one school, never quite understood that. I know it was trying to say, but I don't think it ever really got to say what it wanted to. Keep it simple so that people can buy into it. Dignity and endeavour. I know these are a bit old-fashioned and a bit like almost like the old public schools, which all would have something like dignity and endeavour or something similar. But people understand them, kids understanding. Serving this community. Now, the school that we used to work in, I always thought, people disagree with me, but I always thought that it would have had better as a motto, serving this community, because it was very much a community school rather than the motto it had. In simple things, a bit like nihil nisi bonum. Is that for Everton Football Club?
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like
Only the best
Everton.
will do, or try the best at all times. I know,
Right.
I know they're a bit old fashioned and a bit fat, but I think the kids like them and buy into them.
Yeah.
So that would be my next one. Head teachers and senior leaders and governors, find the direction you want to go. We'll come back to a head teacher later, and make your mission statement communicated and understood by all stakeholders. Otherwise, people will just scratch their heads and say, I don't know what that means.
Well, very interesting because that was one of my ones as well. And
Okay.
what I mean, I agree with everything you've said, and it's something I'm actually thinking about. I've been in schools recently. I'm also doing my head's MPQH, and it
Yeah.
talks about this. And a few schools I've been in recently have really nice, three-word values. And I think the key is to letting students know how they can meet those, when they can meet those. I saw something on the course I'm doing, a school where it had the values, but it had them on posters that brought them alive. It says, "We do this, I will do this." So it's actually not just saying respect for all, but it will say, I will say thank you, I will say good morning. It's a very basic thing. So I
Yeah.
think it's really important for the students to see what the clear moral, the clear vision, the clear purpose of the school is, and be able to perhaps um, go back to it. So we're an IB school, and the IB's got something called the learner profile, 10 attributes on what a student should be. Risk taker, caring, open-minded, knowledgeable,
Yeah.
etc. And we have monthly assemblies. Teachers nominate students for learner profile awards, and the person who runs that party assembly will read out a sentence on how the student met it. They'll come and I'll give the certificate for learner profile awards. Now that's not linked to our school. Every IB school has those. However, I think it's a really nice way to have like school vision or moral awards where kids can go, oh right, that's it. And what I'm finding myself doing recently, we had a complaint about our students knocking someone on the stairs at a station and running off and not saying sorry. And I made sure that I linked that to the IB's learner
Mhm.
profile. And I also made it clear that this isn't who I want people to see our school as in the community, leading back to my first point. So, yeah, I think it's really good to keep those alive
Yeah. And your
and
next
not.
one?
Well, I think a good school needs experts teaching and learning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, although we've obviously done what makes a good teacher, I think it's not just, um, you know, them being a good teacher in the classroom, but a school needs to have a teacher that looks at its students, it looks at their needs, it's able to adapt to their needs, it's
Yeah.
able to have a clear vision of where the students are and where they're going. And I think in looking at teachers, I'd say that we must have a good school will have teachers who are growing, who are teachers that want to do professional development. My school this year, we got a review, we got an evaluation from the IB, and we're using that as a good evaluation. However, one of the things was teachers need to improve their understanding of conceptual teaching. That's a approach to teaching. So we've brought back in teacher trios where the teachers do observations of each other. They're not done by leadership. They're done by each other. They then
Yeah.
give advice to each other on ways forward. So it's like I would say a good school needs reflective practitioners who are continually wanting to improve through collaboration and feedback. And I'm actually updating at the moment my teaching standards in my school, and I really want to improve the part of those standards that says, well, what are you giving us outside of the classroom? Because I think the teachers, we're talking about community. What's the teacher giving to the community outside of the classroom? Because, you know, a lot of teachers do it off their own back. But some teachers will, moan that they've got a lunch duty or that they've got to do a study hall. It's like, well, yeah, nobody wants them, but you've got to be able to, as long as it's in the hours, to put yourself forward to things that can help the school students rather than just being in the classroom. So I'll summarize by saying expert teachers who are not just good at the teaching, but also want to go that one step further, improve and reflect.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a very important point. I would caveat it with one thing that I'd also want my teachers to be prepared to say, not no, but hang on. Are we sure this is the direction we want to go in? To be treated with the professional respect by their senior leaders that they
Sure.
deserve. So there's an openness, being like the aviation industry where something's gone wrong, people own up to it, and that's how they make such progress and get to such generally high safety standards compared to other industries where there's kind of secrecy and avoidance and blame passing, buck passing. A school where people openly say, we're getting this wrong, we got that wrong, I got that wrong, let's move forward in a different direction, I think is really important to go along with the expertise that you're describing
Yeah.
and the willingness to go
And
one step ahead. Because you know what's going to happen. A head teacher is going to say at some point when things are going wrong, why didn't somebody tell me from the trenches? Never mind
yeah,
my strong deputy heads who should have stopped me from the trenches. I should have had a situation where even junior teachers could say, hang on, I'm not comfortable with this, or it's not working.
yeah. I
So
think we might come on
to
to
add to that, yeah.
leadership. I think we might come on to leadership later, but yeah, I think what you say is really important. You need to trust there for teachers to be able to say, yeah, are we all going in the same direction? And I really like the point about being able to say, yeah, it doesn't work. We um we do yearly, and we have to as part of the IB, but I also think it's good. We do yearly reviews of policies, all policies, all stakeholders as well. We get parents involved as well. This doesn't work, but also the main thing there is do are people aware? Anyone can, not anyone, but yeah, you pretty much now with Chat GPT, you can do a policy, a nice one on a bit of paper.
Yeah.
Again, is it alive? Do teachers, do parents, do students know what it is and why it is? I think a good school makes things clear to parents, and it's something that I think personally I need to get my school to improve on. At the moment, I've got a few ideas. I had a PTA meeting on after the sports day yesterday, and it was really good discussion actually about how we can get parents more aware of what we need.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah,
I'm going to stay with kind. I'm going to extend the one about staff, teachers, and
yeah,
it's about staff turnover because it's about again about calibrating a balance if you can. If you
yeah,
need staff turnover because you need people to be promoted within the industry, go elsewhere, take their ideas with them. You need new ideas. You need fresh blood. You need youth. You need things to be regenerated to a certain degree. But but having a staff turnover that's too high, in which good people are being lost continually year on year, that's not good. It's not good for the kids. It's not good for continuity, and it's usually a sign of negative things. If I hear of schools that I deal with in which there's 25, 26 teaching and others, but often teaching members of staff leaving each July, alarm bells are ringing for me.
sure.
There are, certainly in a big city like London, there's many reasons why people move on. It's not just about what's happening in that school, but it's often a sign that something's not quite right. So it's having the new blood, the new ideas, freshening things up, often from the bottom end and in the middle, but not excessively so.
Yeah,
And
I
it's one
certainly
of the big
agree. I like,
frustrations. It's one of the big frustrations of parents. The teachers keep changing
yeah,
again. two
Yeah,
or three times
100%.
a year, particularly with exam classes. How on earth are they supposed to get good results when they've got 3 or 4 different teachers over 2 years?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's the main problem I receive from parents when we have turnover. Unfortunately, we're a Japanese calendar school, so when teachers do change, it's not the end of the year. Because we're an international department in a Japanese school, we've got that horrible clash of teachers wanting to leave in
Yeah.
July and the school started in April. So yeah, that has a lot of effects, negative effects. New staff, as you say, I really like the idea of new ideas coming into the school. When I do recruit, I do try to think about, who we got, how would they fit in. Um, do we want new in this department? Do we need a little bit of experience? I think really matching your staff will help to reduce the turnover. But I have friends who work in schools with very good conditions, and staff don't want to leave, and he wants some to move on, naturally, and they're not. So I think lack of turnover can cause issues. I'm not being in a school like that. I'm just hearing off different leaders that I know myself. So yeah, turnover's important. But the big thing is, as you say, is opening up. A good school will open up, keep open chances for staff to go where they want to. Now in
Yeah.
my school, I've got to go step and step above to get any coordinator position because obviously people want to get paid for it. So what I've done, and I'm really this shows, some parts of why I'm really pleased with my school or the way it is. I've got about 3 or 4 staff leading initiatives without being paid, which is absolutely fantastic. One, it's helping them, with their professional development. But two, it just shows that they do have some trust and they do show they want students to move on. So I've got a transition to primary in the same school. I've got a behaviour um, teacher at the moment. Places, things like that, where teachers aren't being paid, but they're just putting themselves out to help others. And you know, hopefully that they'll be able to use that when they do want to move on and
Oh
do want to
yeah.
apply
Yeah, I
for
was going to
jobs.
say,
So
as
it
long as
kind of
that's
helps them.
rewarded eventually with
Yeah,
improved pay and promotion formally.
sure.
They're doing
Yeah,
kind of an apprenticeship, really, aren't they,
yeah, it
before they
is.
move on?
And what I really like is teachers that show initiative and come and ask,
Yeah.
here's a gap I see. Um, can we try and fill that? And yeah, that's great. I really
Well,
like that.
yeah, that's a good point because there are schools where everything flows from the top down and nobody's allowed to make suggestions. That's, again, not a good sign. You don't want excessively so when people have worked long and hard to set things up that work, but you've got to have, got to be open to ideas.
Sure. Um,
Next one for you.
yeah, so I think maybe we touched a little bit, and I just did then about leadership. I think we need leadership in a school. The leadership's got to be ethical. I think leadership's got to be, evidence informed, not just leaders off the cuff, just changing things. But I think leaders have got to be selfless. They've got to show integrity. They've got to be objective. They've got to be accountable themselves. Unfortunately, I've worked in schools where perhaps leaders aren't being held accountable, and then the best will in the world, some will then maybe turn off themselves and where they're going and what they need to do. I think leaders need to be open. Now, there are times when we can't say everything. We're told things that we can't. Obviously, I can't email everything to all members of staff, but I do as much as I can and be honest with staff. There's nothing more than staff, in my experience, appreciate is honesty. So a good
Yeah,
school will have a
communication. Yeah,
leader. Yeah,
yeah.
communication. So I do personnel meetings, and I sometimes say to staff, "Yeah, got that wrong," or "Let's try that next year." And I think staff, and some staff say, "Look, I know we can't get this, but this is what I want. But I appreciate you going above and asking for it." But I think a leader, a good leader for me, and a good school will have a leader who is not sat away in their office. Believe me, I sometimes feel, oh God, I've been in my office all morning. I want to be seen. So I love having a little walk around, just going into class, which I know some staff might feel, oh no, I'm being observed, but it's just interacting with the kids. And a good leader's going to be there that you should offer to take part in assemblies. Every time at assembly, I'll make sure, even if it's only for 5 minutes, that I'm going to connect with my kids so they still know who I am. They still know what I want to push through as well. And I think a good leader, what I'm kind of getting at is a leader that, walks the walk. We can all find different articles telling us what to do. We have governments, we have programs that do it, but a leader, a teacher needs to see the leaders
Yeah,
doing that. And what you said about in the trenches, I think leaders need to have been in the trenches.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to sometimes get found out. So sometimes I think what happened to me in a school, and I'll quite often say that's not my expertise. Go to that leader, part of my leadership team. I'm not going to blag that I know about this or that because I'm going to get found out. I'm much more interested or able to talk about certain other things like behaviour, teaching and learning side of it. When there's other things we need to do, like budgets, I'm quite happy to move that along and be part of the discussion, but not the one who's going to pretend I'm going to lead on how we
yeah,
form the budget. I'm not interested, and I'm not an economics
yeah.
genius, but I know at
Yeah.
the end of the day I have to do that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, heads, I've always thought that head teachers in whatever kind of school are uniquely powerful and influential people. They can change the culture. They can affect everything very, very quickly if they get decisions right. Sometimes they get them badly wrong, which is why I often say to parents who ask, is it good to be in a certain catchment area? I'll just say, just hang on. Your kid's only 5. Don't put yourself in a catchment area for a very good secondary school just yet. Things can change even with the change of head. Heads are uniquely powerful people. I would argue, even compared to the leaders of democratic countries, I think they have more power. I really do, for good or bad, if it's used well or not used well. And most heads, of course, use their powers very well.
Sure.
Communication and getting people to understand your problems and your issues. But this is the decision at the end of the day is very important. And you're right that the going back to one of the first heads I ever worked for, who I kind of idolized in a lot of ways because he would never ask us to do something he wasn't prepared to do himself.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
asked us to do something he wasn't prepared to or hadn't done himself. And that's a leader. That's a leader for me, whilst distancing himself enough so that he could make the difficult decisions.
It's very important, isn't it? Not to have that distance as well. But yeah, you gotta be able to do that. So yeah, I brought in lunch duty last year, um, just for grades 6 to 8,
Yeah,
years 6 to 8. But I do 4 a week out of 5, and I am the leader who does the walk around to check everyone is in their place. The other one, so I make sure I'm in the thick of it. Now I enjoy being with the kids for 45 minutes, at just the time they're eating. So I'm getting a benefit from that. But I want my staff to know that I'm not sat away in my ivory tower dumping a lunch duty on someone. Just little things like that, I think are really important in
yeah,
being a leader.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think a good school,
Yeah, go on, Tom.
yeah, I think a good school needs to have a leader that has buy-in for the school as well. Now, you know, that might not be something someone really thinks about as they want to become a leader in the school. But I think going back to part of the community, knowing about the school, I think that's really important to have these, as you said, the vision, to have buy into it and to actually believe in it and to really see interacting with it. I think if a school, I've worked in schools where leaders don't really, you can see them, they're doing okay, but if they're not having the
Yeah,
buy-in of the school, I worked a school in England, an IB state school in England I worked at, and the leader, one of the heads, it was a dual headship. Both were really good, but the main one linked to IB was absolutely brilliant because he lived and breathed it, and you could see that in his meetings. You could see that in how he interacted. Didn't get everything I wanted from him, of course I didn't, but I knew when I went and asked the things that he listened, and he said why I couldn't get what I wanted to get. So I think a really good leader makes you feel you've been listened to. I think, as you say about the power of a school leader. Now, education's all I've ever worked in, so I can't compare, but the way a school leader can affect morale of staff is
mm,
it's quite significant. So we all have our off days, but if you've got a leader that's not showing interest, is just shutting people down, I've seen it happen, and yeah, that can really get to staff very
yeah, it
quickly, and
does.
that can, rightly or wrongly, can have can deal even the way that staff then go into their teaching.
Yeah, 100%. Next one for me is
Yeah,
we kind of just touched on this briefly before, but parental involvement.
yeah,
If there's a separation between the school and parents don't feel comfortable coming to the school, whatever their socioeconomic background and educational history, then that's not a good thing. We know that a lot of parents, school was not great for them, and we've said this before. It was often the very school that their kids are now going to, and they've got these terrible memories of years gone by. That's got
Sure.
to be bridged and it's got to be broken. And the schools have got to find ways to get parents not just to drop the kids off the door and then skedaddle and get away as quick as they can, but to feel welcome and involved in all sorts of ways. Strangely, there was a funny little story recently. I may have mentioned this chap. He's been a professional footballer all his life. He's a former pupil of mine. He was in my school football team many, many, many moons ago. A guy called Peter Clark, who's just passed his 1,000th professional game in English leagues.
Bad.
He started at Everton. He's been at every club you can name, captain at most of them. The reason I say this is that Peter, who's 40, God bless him, 42 now or something, his parents, when he was a schoolboy, a very good schoolboy footballer, obviously, came to every single game, every single training event. They drove the minibus. They helped out.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, apparently, apart from obviously COVID times, and maybe because of extreme illness, they never missed one of his. They're still alive. Never missed one of his 1,000 professional games. How about that?
Absolutely amazing.
So I know that's an
Absolutely.
extreme example of a kid that was very, very successful with his
Yeah.
football, always going to go places and committed parents. But things like that, parents will just volunteer but it's not just having the systems that they've got to feel, welcome and
Yeah.
we're not excluded and particularly if you've got lower parents from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who haven't got great educational histories themselves. Schools have got to find a way to make them welcoming. Primary schools are great. The kids
Yeah.
drop off in the morning. It's always lovely to see they're actually coming into the classroom and having little meetings and dropping off little messages and clothing. It's kind of organic in a primary school, but I go to too many places where we'll talk about school receptions later, where it's kind of parents should not enter. There's a kind of
Sure.
feeling, and I don't like that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I really like your example. I mean, that lad is one in however many thousand that's going to
Yeah,
go on and play football. But it's really nice in secondary where we've seen parents turn up when they know the students aren't going to become professional, but
yeah, good point. Yeah,
they still come in, wind or rain. Um, yeah, I think parents are vital. As I said, I met with a PTA, and yeah, it's not only allowing them to know the policies, which is really important. Because unfortunately, in my role, I deal with the parents when it goes wrong. When a parent has, no, recently a parent's given too much help. Well, you don't have to give any help, but given help
yeah,
to a student in an assessment and an external assessment, it wasn't allowed, and the parent hadn't read the policy. We'd
yeah.
have meetings, and they were arguing with it. So I think, as I say, it's really important to get parents on board and part of the school community. A few ways we do it. A selfish way we've done recently is we have parents as our grade 12 IB exam invigilators. Obviously, not parents whose
All
students are
right.
doing it,
Okay.
but parents from lower down the school, and it helps them see the end game, and it makes us very popular with our teachers because they don't have to do the horrible. We've all done exam invigilation. We as a school, we
Yeah.
have we have festivals. Our biggest festival, we recently, nothing to do with me, recently that we started getting parents involved in running the school bazaar, and the PTA collect. They do all the marketing. They work there for 2 days, and they really like it. And what the PTA do then is from the profits, it's split even across divisions. And so, for example, our parents use the money to buy a microwave for our sixth form equivalent students to be able to use at lunch. So things like that, where parents can see how they're helping and how that has a knock on to their students, their children, I think is really good. One thing I have done with parents, it's not my idea, I've taken it from other schools, but I think it works really well, is parents coming into assemblies.
Mhm.
Um, I've worked in schools where they've spoken about parents have done it for their careers. I had a parent recently do it where he came to the school as a child, and he spoke to students about our school's ideals, not the IB ones, our school's whole person education. And he came with his two kids in the assembly and spoke about it and how he's used that in his career, a successful career. So I think getting parents involved like that is really important. Um, to make a good school. And yeah, the kids are embarrassed, but they're probably kind of proud. And it's good to see our
Right.
parents are involved here. We're all working together.
Yeah, sure. Next for you.
I think a good school needs, and this is something else that I'm trying a lot to put in place, is have well managed systems around the school. So my school is a private school, so we have to get admissions, we have to
Mhm.
do entrance exams, and we've got to do a lot of work to ensure that they're fair, they're designed so we know who we want. But we've also got financial implications. We're a private school. We have to make our own money. So we need, I believe, a good school will have good systems that aren't, although we do have teachers joining in, it's not our expertise, but we have
Yeah,
people with expertise, whether it's governors in some schools, but who are actually looking over with
yeah,
fair, well managed systems to do the behind the scenes work to ensure the school is sustainable, it's getting enough people, it's making the money, it's
mhm.
building the correct building. So it's whether or not, our aircon packed up, and Japan is insanely hot for half of the year. And we quite had to move students internally, and then people have got to decide, do we replace the toilets in this block or do we replace the aircon in that block? And
Yeah,
I think a good school needs people a step back, looking at the big picture, who isn't an emotional teacher who's just
yeah.
taught through a hot period or whatever, to maybe put these systems into place.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't got, strangely enough, I'd forgotten about this. I hadn't put governors on my list, but governors are really important. They can make a big difference, particularly when you've
Yeah,
got, whether it's a private fee-paying school or not, people with business interests and business
yeah,
knowledge and financial acumen. Because let's face it, it's not a strength in the teaching profession. And I know when school self-governance, financial governance start to become a bigger thing in the late 90s, early noughties,
mm,
I think some senior leaders really struggled with that because it
yeah,
just wasn't their teachers who, you know, run teaching and learning and all of that. So you're absolutely right. Having this, you know, these experts around, often coming from the governing body, if it's particularly if it's a school that's not attached to a local authority and is not getting in the expertise that they provide, really important. Absolutely, yeah. Never didn't think about that. Was true. I have encountered down the years some fantastic governors. Some that were a
yeah.
bit strange, but
Yes,
all sorts of people get involved. Sometimes quite surprising people get involved in the
yes,
governorship of schools that you wouldn't expect, but they bring something different, a bit left
yeah.
field. But
And yeah, I mean, a good school is only as good as its governors,
yeah,
its outside bodies as well, because they're the ones who are doing
yeah,
a lot of
and
things that
they've got to have
expertise.
a good open relationship with the head teacher. You know,
Yeah,
the chair of governors and the head teacher have got to do a lot together. And if they don't get on and don't see eye to eye about the mission and where the school is going, then there's going to be immediate trouble. You know, it's
yeah,
like a premiership. We could give a good example of a club, couldn't we? That you know well, where you've got the CEO, the chairman of a football club, at
yeah,
loggerheads with his managers.
yes. I
It
wonder who that
doesn't
could
work,
be.
does it? But we won't go into that because things may have
No,
moved on.
no.
Right. The next one, was it my turn? It's my turn now. It is, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
The next one I've got is I'm going to go for extracurricular, and we've mentioned this. I'm not really talking so much about the community. We agree, getting the
Yeah,
community in is really important, but that enrichment curriculum to
yeah,
go. I said very early on about strong academics, of course, that's what a school's for. But having that enriched curriculum, strangely, people imagine that the public schools and the posh private schools here in England, they're all about the academics. They're not. Where they're actually often exceptional is what and they can of course afford to, but it is the enriched curriculum they provide.
yeah,
And then you go to the other end of the scale to like a pupil referral unit or a special school, and you see an enriched curriculum there working just as well. So you've got to produce kids that get qualifications and are educated to the standard society requires and is good for them. But you also need a rounder pupil, and Some schools are not as good at it as you might imagine. You might think all schools are good at that, but they're not.
No.
Would you agree?
100%. I think, yeah, a good school is something that will offer extracurricular in ways where students can feel success, can build on their skills, can do activities maybe they don't have the parents don't have the money to do outside of school.
Yeah.
I also think it really works well for staff to work with students in this environment that isn't linked to exam results or pressures like that.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I mean, in schools I work at the moment, yeah, we've got all sorts from debate club to chess club. We have more formal ones as well. One thing I think we do really what my school does, it's not an IB initiative, it's a school initiative called GU Kenku, which means free study. So years 6 to 8 only, so the youngest of our students, an hour and a half have a choice of a free study, which is extracurricular. It's not linked to any assessment or anything. And our teachers can then, so we've got teachers doing photography, we've got gardening, we've got art, we've got French culture, we've got loads of things going on where it's really just nice to walk around and
Mm.
see it going on and give the students something where they can concentrate. It's choice. How often do students get choice in schools? And I'm not just talking, GCSE choice of subjects, but a choice of what you actually want to do as part of the school day. I think is really important, and a good school will really help that flourish. And when I did the debate club, I got my senior students to start running it for the younger students. It helped them because it's part of their service for their D of E equivalent in the IB as well. But yeah, it's also good to just allow students to show growth in that as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
Um,
Another one for you?
okay, yeah, over to
I've got
me.
another couple more to go through.
Sure. I think we've touched on it, but I think I'll say as one big thing, a good school is really caring about the well-being of students. And I don't just mean what we know about. We've spoken before about form tutors. We've spoken about the teachers and the well-being. But I've worked in one school where from going the school before to that school, seeing how they did the well-being was absolutely brilliant. And it really made me think, wow, this is exactly what you should do. Now, of course, I understand schools have different um, people they can get, different staffing, money, but this was a state school and it
Yeah.
had a student support service where, they had their own little part of it was part of the humanities block just underneath. None of them were teachers, but they were there to deal with students, new students who found it hard to settle in, students who didn't have had difficulty making
It's
friends, meeting
essentially an
people.
idea that's come from America. It's been in
Right.
American high schools for the longest of times. So it's one of the maybe more positive things we've adopted from that.
Yeah, well, if that's where it's from, then yes, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. It is. And for me, it was just seeing some students who dread playtime, break time. Sorry, they dread break. They don't want to go to this class or whatever. For them to have a safe space in a school. Now, I think as a good form tutor, I've always tried to make a safe space in a form room, but that doesn't work for everybody. So I think a good school will, of course, be a safe environment, but will have a support staff. And the key here will be because I worked in every school I've worked in, we've had support staff, but not all have had the same quality of staff and teachers collaborating with each other,
Yeah.
sharing what's working well and what isn't working well. And I really think a good school will have personal support plans or however they're called, individual education plans, wherever you are teaching, that's done with the specialist staff and it's done with staff who know the students. And then if I see a student for 1 hour a week in million and one things going on, at least I can see that student. I know exactly what he or she needs for that 1 hour a week. Because in secondary school,
Yeah.
it's like a production line of kids. But for a school to have a place where the students can feel safe and where the staff can then where they're allowed to, of course, some I know some information is confidential, but yeah, where they can share it with staff. So I think that for that to work, that needs to work well for school to be a good one.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when I go into pupil referral units, alternative provision, special schools, various kinds, they obviously tend to be, they have to be very good at all of that. sometimes I will see senior leaders in mainstream academies and big secondary schools and say, do you go in and see what they do out of interest? Often the answer is, oh, we're planning to do, but we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
And I'll say, go in and see. It's not what you expect. I mean, even then, the kids in the pupil referral units, the alternative provision can be very, very, very difficult to deal with on a day by day, hour by hour basis. But they don't have put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah.
And I think if some of the mainstream schools who are losing these very kids, who then go to the alternative provision because they can't cope in the big school,
Yeah.
if they had a few more of the skills and approaches that the AP people have, they'd probably not lose them in the first place. So I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah,
And
I think if we
you've
could
got
share those systems, put those systems in place, which obviously work, then we could
yeah,
hopefully help people.
and finding the right people to do that. There
Yeah.
are particular skills that maybe not all academically driven teachers have. There are many roles now that people have in schools where they're experts. They don't have to think about teaching and learning, just about welfare. So I totally agree.
Cool.
I think my is it second to last one. Uh, yeah, I'm going to go with former pupils coming back in, and what I mean by that is, I think it's really important to have two types of pupils: former pupils, those that have really made it in life, maybe against the odds,
Yep.
coming back and saying, "This is how I did it, and this is what you should do, and strive because you get there." And those that have messed up, I mean, including those that have gone the criminal way in life. And I've
Right.
seen both. And of course, you'll know more about this than I will, but I've seen both of those systems work profoundly well. There's nothing better than maybe in a tough part of the world, a kid coming back in and saying, I was you. In
Yep.
fact, I was worse than you. And look where I am now. And the converse of that is, I thought I knew what I was doing, and I've given myself and my family and my parents and my wife and my kids a terrible life, and I now regret it. It's time that you didn't become me. You don't want to become me. I think so. Those two, school, and there are many schools that do that. It's a very hard thing to organise and get right with safeguarding issues and all of that.
Sure.
But if and obviously it's referring to independence and public schools, they're great at obviously the first bit,
Yeah.
because they have kids going on to run countries and
Yeah.
organisations and be high achievers. So that's
Sure.
easy. The other bit is harder, but
I think so.
I think for me that's another very important thing to achieve.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've seen it work well, very well.
Yeah,
Um, I think for me, and it kind of links to I think last one, is it about student who students want to listen to.
yeah,
So, me and many people listening to this will have taught PSHE, personal social health education, or the equivalent,
yeah,
in their country. And yeah, as now I'm 50 years old, I can tell students the rights and wrongs, but how much more powerful is it
yeah.
for a 19, 20, whatever person who knows their area, who's been them, to come and do it? And I've seen it work very well. And
Who was that person that when we were together at the school in London? Who was that person that was completely tattooed?
yeah,
Remind me of that. What did that guy do?
I was the first time I saw that person, I
Because he was
think a
great, wasn't
student.
he? He was
Yeah, I
really
think a
good.
student teacher there, and yeah, he came in and he had this knack. And I remember I shared my office with one of the assistant heads at the time. I was a student teacher, but that was, my office. It was where I had a desk. And I remember him talking to the teacher about some of the students who had left, talking to him in tears, and he told the assistant teacher about how that student was and how they were feeling, which they should may not have told the teachers at the time. We're going back, 20, well over 20
Yeah,
odd years now. I think things
yeah.
are pretty better in terms of support. But this person who came back in managed to get students to talk about their feelings. These were kids with bad behavior. These were kids who'd been asked to
Yeah.
speak to that person. So, I was brand new into the profession then. And yeah, it was really a bit of an eye opener, definitely.
Well, he was there to shock, wasn't he, about the things that
Yeah.
can go wrong in life.
Yeah.
I can't remember the details, but it had a great impact.
He
I
did.
didn't know about the quiet conversations he was also having. So
Yeah.
that's I did no idea
He
about.
was like covered in tattoos, completely covered, wasn't he? And
He
that
was
was the
quite, he was scary. I mean, he was a scary looking character. Underneath, and had gone through a lot in his life, obviously. Come
Was
out
he
the
even
other
called
end,
the scary guy? Was he even called that as his
something
professional name?
like that. But whatever
Yeah,
it works. He was very good.
did.
Seen many of those. So that sort of thing for me. Another one for you. I've got
Yeah,
one more to do.
a good school celebrates student leadership,
Yeah,
and that goes on to what I was saying about, yeah, kids can nod when a teacher talks, but a student leading really shows faith in students, it shows belief in students, and it can be anything from we have students leading assemblies. We do a lot of open days. As I said, at the moment, I'm in a private school. We need money. We need parents to come. So I just said, look, I want students to show them around. I want students to sit with them.
yeah.
Teachers, of course, academic affairs, of course, but parents want to hear from students. I was interviewed for a job once, and as part of the interview panel was students. And I mentioned earlier actually the IB has a learner profile, and when I met the students for the interview, I got asked the best question of the day, in my opinion, was what part of the learner profile are you least like? I was like, oh wow, I've now got to say how I don't meet it. And I thought, what a brilliant question. Now, maybe a teacher told the student to ask it, but that's going back years, and I've used that actually. I've used that in interviews since. Um, so I think student leadership. Now that's anything from in the classroom to getting students to do starters, plenaries, to present in assemblies, to MC assemblies. I do a big international day once a year, and I made it as part of the DOV equivalent student led. Now, of course, I was there to because kids, they've never done that before. They need to know knock on of what they want and who you need to ask, and one change there is going to affect that and that and that. But that's part of the learning process. But for me, to have the students that and they led talent show productions, they led international sport productions, they led cooking, international food. And for me, I think as a teacher, that's one of the most rewarding parts of the job. And I think many teachers listening to this will agree. I also think parents really appreciate it. You mentioned secondary and primary earlier. I think parents need to know more, linking on a little bit now about the success of what students do. So I made sure that 2 week on Saturday ago, prospective we had demo lessons for prospective students, and each demo lesson had 2 students to help. And the great thing was, our students were helping the prospective ones, obviously a lot younger. But afterwards, I just saw them talking to the parents, and it was brilliant. So I took photos for their service portfolio, and I made sure I emailed every parent and the student said, "You've done our school proud. You've met what we're trying to do. This is what we want." So it's kind of linking it to the mission and vision we spoke about earlier. But I think really a good school will encourage and celebrate student leadership. And going back to what you said about old pupils coming back, how great is it when you end up working with students that you used to teach now
Yeah,
as
yeah,
members
well,
of
yeah,
staff, which I actually I've done that in England and Japan, yeah. So that's fantastic as well.
yeah.
So yeah, that's a nice one for me
Took,
to finish on. Shouldn't a
yeah,
good school celebrates and encourages student leadership everywhere?
yeah. I'm just remembering your. It was always a huge event each year in Activities Week in the summer. Your mock
Oh
United
yes,
Nations
Model
General
United
Assembly.
Nations. Yeah,
Took a lot of organising. They still do it. I still go to schools and they're doing very similar things here. And the other thing I was thinking of, I always remember on the open evenings where the year 8
yes.
kids were given the responsibility of taking the parents round on the open evening for the prospective year 7 kids. And they did it so well with such a
They,
sense of pride. Sometimes quite naughty kids as well. You
it's
wouldn't
that's the
expect.
thing. That's the
And
thing.
suddenly they are
You see a
acting
different
very adult,
side.
walking these strangers around the building and showing showing the place off with pride. It's
It's
always fun.
amazing. You could think, you little so and so.
Yeah,
You could think you were doing that in class yesterday. And now look at you now. You're like
yeah,
well dressed. Yeah, it's amazing. And as you say, it's sometimes the kids you wouldn't expect. We know the kids that can do it well and do it well. But
yeah.
opening it up to the ones who you wouldn't most assume could is absolutely brilliant. It's really one of the best parts of the job, I think.
It is. My final one is
Yep.
it's really about how schools treat everybody, no matter who they are. But it focuses specifically on something I've had a lot of experience of, and that's school reception areas. And what I mean is that in I've seen the sublime to the ridiculous. I've been to school reception areas that are an oasis of calm, beautifully organized, welcoming, efficient,
Hmm.
quiet, uh, interesting, informative. And I've gone to others that are not any of those things,
Right.
where there's a kind of sense of stress and disorganization and arguments between parents and children and teachers and
Sure.
parents and deliveries that the person delivering the Amazon whatever it is kept waiting and gets frustrated,
Yeah.
and it's just a stressful place to be. And I'm sitting here thin slicing and
Interesting.
watching all of this. And essentially, what it boils down to is how it's a sign of how te schools treat even the guy delivering or the woman delivering the parcel,
Yeah.
how they treat the gardener, the apprentice girl that's working in the canteen on her first day, washing dishes or whatever it might be. Visitors like me. Sometimes I go to schools and it's like, they know all about me and they know why I'm there and they're very, very welcoming and respectful of the job I've come to do. And there's other times I go to schools and it's like, who are you and what do you want? I mean, not, they don't actually say that, but that's what they
Yeah.
mean. You can see it in the manner.
Yeah.
Who are you and what do you want and what kind of risk are you to our children? Why have you turned up? What's this about? And
Yeah.
who's so even though the system should exist for them knowing this. So it's 2 points really in one. It's the first impression you get when anybody arrives, whether it's the Prime Minister or it's a guy delivering an Amazon parcel, and what that tells you about how they treat people beyond the so-called royalty of the teachers and the senior leaders, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. There's something, yeah, I hadn't thought about. I've been thinking as you were talking for a while. I think maybe that's perhaps because my school, because we're a division in a massive, massive complex, we don't have that one main reception area. But I've been in many that do here in Japan and back home in England. And yeah, you can really tell how welcome you are. I think the good ones I liked in schools are ones that, have their mission, what we've spoken about earlier. And also, I like ones with newspaper cuttings of achievements from the school or
Yeah.
whatever in there. But I think it's really important. How do they treat everyone? And also how the reception staff, yeah, are, as you say, making you feel. I think that's really important
They,
because
they, they have a very, very,
first,
reception staff have a very, very complex and difficult, far more
yeah,
complex than people realize, particularly
oh
today with
yeah,
all sorts of safeguarding
yeah,
issues and people allowed and not, security and all sorts. But it's not so much that. It's sometimes I'll see conversations going on between reception staff and kids coming in late,
yeah,
or between kids and teachers, or between heads of year and kids, and or in parents. And it's in the very public space in which
yeah,
visitors come. And I feel like standing up and saying to the person in charge, "Don't do that here.
yeah, yeah.
You need to
I've
do
seen
it.
that many, many
Don't
times.
don't do that here. You don't know who I am,
Yeah,
right? And you're this is the impression you're giving me. Now I understand because I'm who I am, but
yeah,
somebody else might not, and they're going
no.
to take away a very, very warped and maybe incorrect, or maybe correct, sadly,
Well,
perception.
sadly, I was going to say maybe, and they might be potential parents or people who come in looking for a job. Yeah, I
An
mean, yeah,
HMI inspector,
yeah,
who knows? Local MP, you don't know.
no,
When you're having that conversation as that angry teacher with the frustrated child
yeah.
or parent very publicly in front of visitors sitting there on a little seat or on a couch next to the plant pot, then
I,
you don't know what impact you're having. So a
I
strange kind of a strange one that comes from my world, but it does
yeah,
tell
no,
me a lot.
it's very
It tells me
interesting.
a lot about how that school treats people.
I I worked at a school where the reception was fine. It was fine, but once you got let into the school, you got buzzed through, you were straight into the next to the dining hall where the kids would be queuing up. And I used to think, oh God, if I've got to get a visitor in, where the kids are lining up and it could be mayhem, you just think, oh, please be okay today. So yeah, that just made me smile thinking of the placing of them can be a little bit, we're straight into the heartbeat of the school here. And
But
sometimes school kids are,
I've always
yeah,
been at pains when people are walking me through a school, walk me through a
yeah,
school, and the kids are changing between lessons, so it's lunchtime or
yeah,
whatever, and there's a bit of bedlam, well-meaning bedlam
yeah.
mostly, and they'll always apologise and say, "I'm really sorry." And I always say, "You're
Yeah.
not going to surprise me with anything."
No, no.
But believe me,
And most of the
there's
time you can
nothing
have a bit of a gig.
there's nothing you're going to show me that I haven't seen before. Don't worry.
No. And yeah, most can, yeah, most understand schools. Not mo yeah, a lot that we deal with do. So yeah, that's very interesting. Right.
So
Well, I think that wraps up.
that's my last one.
Yeah. Well,
Anything else from you?
I think we've covered most areas. I'll just give a recap. I've been just making notes. We've done free leg, discipline, academic
Yep.
expectations, and caring. We've spoken about good links to community, a clear mission, motto, values, good teachers, professional development. We've done staff turnover, leaders walking the walk, parental involvement, governors and systems, extracurricular, safeguarding, former pupils coming back, student leadership, and school reception areas. I think those they all put done well will make a very good
And
school. And
here's the question: is there any school in the world that does all of those to the optimal degree? Probably not. Probably not.
no,
I mean, there's some that get very close and will do
yeah,
pretty much all of
and
them, maybe at 75, 80%, and some of them at 100%. To get
yeah,
all of those things right over a long period of time
yeah,
is very, very hugely complex and difficult to
hmm.
achieve. But there's a
And
lot of
some,
people out there giving it a damn good go,
yeah, there are,
despite once again, we've had this conversation before, what the certainly the British national press would try to have the world believe.
yeah,
I mean, it's getting worse here. I've got to say at the moment. When I see a news feed or newspaper, it's always some really odd, unusual, and unfortunate negative story about schools and
yeah,
school teachers. And I know that's news,
yeah.
but the people
Well,
working so hard to achieve that significant list you've just read out and getting it
yeah,
right year after year after year after year, nobody's going to write a single word about them
no.
ever.
No, I don't think. Well, no, it doesn't make news. But I think if people came and looked at those things, only a couple were direct teaching and learning, but those things around what the school is, which is a body of X amount of thousand adults and children in the heart of a community every day, and all the different things that are going on, and all the different ways we make a difference, and they might start writing about that rather than, as you say, the negative side. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if any of our listeners think about what that list, anything we've missed,
Yeah.
any ways schools might think about prioritizing, any ways they link together. You can see some clearly will have knock-on effects on others. But yeah, I
People
mean,
can leave comments on
yeah,
YouTube.
please
They
leave
can.
comments.
Our email is attached to the end of this video, so they
It
can
is.
email us.
Please like, please
Either of those.
subscribe, and yeah, we will be back again soon. I've really enjoyed that chat, Terry. Thank you for listening, and please share if you think it's worth passing this on to anyone you work with inside or outside of schools. Thank you
Brilliant.
very much.
Thanks, Ollie. See you again
See you
soon.
next time.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.